My friends at Easy Cater are workplace catering pros, helping you find food for everything from daily employee meals to staff meetings and special events. Visit easycater.com/leaderassistant to find out more.
The Leader Assistant podcast exists to encourage and challenge assistants to become confident, game-changing leader assistants.
Hey friends, thanks for tuning in to the Leader Assistant podcast. It's episode 130, and today it's a special episode. I am excited to feature a webinar recording from my friends at Tack Advisors. So Meagan Strout is the CEO of Tack Advisors, and Tack Advisors, if you don't know, is the leading provider of management, consulting, and recruitment for administrative professionals. And Meagan and her team have agreed to share the recording of a recent webinar she hosted called Admin Leader in Action. So this webinar features Tack Advisors executive business partner, Alexa Gundermann, who speaks with her former colleague, Alissa Stearman. Alissa is executive business partner to the CEO and co-founders of sweetgreen. During this engaging conversation, they discuss the do's and don'ts of developing a strong administrative team to support the co-founders and C-suite executives of a unicorn startup. Alissa and Alexa actually used to work together in tandem supporting the sweetgreen founders. So they are going to share insight into how to work cohesively to keep executives and admins on track. So thank you, Meagan and the Tack Advisors team. Thank you, Alissa and Alexa, for allowing me to share and feature your amazing conversation with the Leader Assistant community. So I hope you enjoy it. Please check out the show notes at leaderassistant.com/130. That's leaderassistant.com/130 to check out tackadvisors.co and connect with Meagan, Alissa, and Alexa on LinkedIn and elsewhere.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Meagan Strout, and I am the CEO of Tack Advisors. And today I am joined by two very special guests, Alissa Stearman and Alexa Gundermann. I want to go ahead and introduce Alissa and Alexa. And I think it's important to give everybody here a little bit of background on why we decided to do this session, because this is kind of an interesting scenario where we have like a long-standing relationship with Alissa. And now Alexa's been brought into the mix, and there is a method to this madness. So Alissa has been a coach of ours at Tack Advisors for about a year or so, but our relationship with Alissa started years before this. She has been an executive assistant and a business partner in Silicon Valley and in Los Angeles for 10 or so years, right, Alissa?
Oh, yeah.
And has known our VP of business development for probably half of that time. So we've known each other for a really long time. And about, I guess, in May or so, I had posted on our website and in our newsletter that I was going to be hiring for my first EA here at Tack Advisors. And since Alissa knows us so well, she immediately picked up the phone and is like, I have the perfect person for you. And so that's where we meet Alexa. Alexa was previous to joining us at sweetgreen, reporting into Alissa and working with her as part of an EA team supporting the co-founders. And she just moved to the East Coast where I am and has started working for me. So we're so excited to have both of you here today and talk about what your relationship looked like when you were at sweetgreen together, because admin leaders and admin teams look very different from company to company. And I think your dynamic is something really special that should be shared with this community. Anything else you two want to add to that story? I feel like I mostly summed it up.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. it was like, without a doubt, I was just like, I saw it and she was sitting next to me. And I think I showed her the job posting, and then I immediately texted you, Meagan. So yeah.
Really, we need to jump on a call.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, why don't we, first kind of question I have for you both is, and really for you, Alissa, is to understand when you joined Sweetgreen, what did the executive assistant team look like? And how did you kind of come to the decision that you were going to hire an EA to help support the co-founders?
Yeah, so when I started, there literally was pretty much no executive support. The person in my role before was a friend of the founders who admittedly said, I have no idea what I've been doing. I've just been kind of winging it. And that was reiterated by literally every other person in the company that worked with him. So very quickly, I think I made a pretty big impact with them. So I was hired for the two co-founders, and then they had hired someone who started a week after me for the CEO. So we started like right alongside each other. She only stayed with the company for 2 weeks. So she decided it wasn't for her and left. And I was tasked with finding her replacement and was going through like a bunch of resumes. And I just didn't see what they wanted in a candidate, kind of my background in Silicon Valley and how I operated and the people I worked with. I wasn't really like seeing that translated in the resumes I was reading. And I had just like spent a few days thinking about it. And I called the CEO and I pitched him on me supporting all three of them and hiring a more junior person, like more tactical role under me. And they all three talked about it. He was just like, do you think you can handle this? And I said, if I get help, yes, I can. And so they went for it. And I think a month after I started or so, Alexa, I believe you started. And she was actually intro to us from the CEO's brother she had known. So it was a good, references are always have a little more clout. So that's kind of how we structured it. And it was different than really anything I had personally done before and different than anything I had seen before. But I think it worked out really well. Yeah. She was with us for 2 years. So
yeah, amazing. The power of networking, networking and who you know, right? Yeah. And so tell me then how you initially structured. You mentioned that you needed somebody a little bit more on the tactical side to support the executive. So can you tell me exactly how you delegated responsibilities and what tasks that you managed versus the tasks that Alexa managed?
Yeah. So as I kind of have grown in my career has been skewed a little more towards the strategic end of things and like business initiatives. I interface with board and investors and work very closely with chief of staff. So that was going to be my end of things. And we needed someone that was just like super organized, like literally a wizard who could do expenses, travel, estate management, personal errands, different like ad hoc projects. It was pretty iterative, and we can discuss more later, but our roles both really evolved. And as mine grew, hers grew alongside. But yeah, my end of things was a little more like strategic, business focused, and hers was very tactical, organizational, like nothing falls through the cracks with her.
Yeah. Well, and now that Alexa's been working with me, I'm like blown away at her ability to kind of keep all the balls in the air because I have such shifting priorities and I feel like I'm constantly throwing things at you and you catch it. And then you remind me like a week later that I completely forgot that I even gave you that task. So I'm certainly very thankful for that. And Alexa, prior to joining Sweetgreen,
your device is offline. To connect.
Sorry, that's my actual Alexa.
Settings.
Amazing.
We'll call you Lex during this so it doesn't upset the other one. So Lex, before you had joined Sweetgreen and started working with Alissa, had you ever worked as part of an EA team before?
No, I had worked for startups, but prior to Sweetgreen, I was at Aston Martin. And so that was like a totally different world. I was always really the only admin where I'd been. So this was a whole new thing for me, but it was amazing to work with Alissa and to really evolve the admin team and to be, from the ground up. It just felt like organic from both of us, because Alissa didn't come from that either. So it kind of just, like with every startup, it's just you roll with the punches and you learn from your experience, and every day is a new day. So
yeah. And so you started a few months after Alissa, and I'm curious to know, what did that sort of onboarding process look like? And, how often did the two of you meet in the beginning to sync on tasks and responsibilities? Tell me about that, Alissa.
Our onboarding was very different than it is now, especially because I was so new. Alexa, I think you started like a month or 6 weeks. Like, it was very short after I started. Yeah. So I was still learning, and I don't remember onboarding you, to be quite honest. I think it was just like, this is how, like, literally, like, here's your computer. This is what we're working on, like, go. As far as like how often we met and spoke, obviously pre-COVID was different. So we sat right next to each other, pretty much started every day with text, either like tacking on from the night before, continuing the conversation, or just like text in the morning, email, Slack. I like to joke, like carrier pigeons, SOS signals, like literally all the ways. We were in constant communication. During COVID, we lived like 2 miles from each other. So we would have like a standing Monday meeting where we would check in and just go over initiatives, because I didn't have a lot of insight into the things that the guys were giving her, because they kind of learned to separate the requests. But we would have that standing meeting, and then we would still like go on walks just to stay connected, obviously like constant text still and calls. But we were two that really, because we work so like symbiotically, we really tried to like see each other at least once a week, safely distanced, but just try to keep that kind of like well-oiled machine running.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, great. And tell me a little bit about what it looks like now, because my understanding is your team and supporting the founders and working together, you're almost kind of like a little team within your team. And then you have other executive assistants now at sweetgreen who support other C-levels and other executives. Is that right? Can you tell me what that dynamic looks like?
Yeah. So I've worked with our chief people officer and some VPs in HR to kind of break out the leveling of the org, because I think a lot of times this role is very misunderstood, even by executives. Like, they don't really know. And even when I broke out like admin assistant, executive business partner, and I was presenting it to the three co-founders and with our chief people officer on the call. And one of the co-founders, with the role breakdown and the job descriptions, even said, well, what's the difference between EA and EVP? So it was a big like educational journey for me. And it was pretty cool to work on, honestly, with, heads of HR. And so now we backfilled Alexa. So I still have that.
God.
Okay. I will remember. So I still have that role under me. And then we have been hiring we basically have a 2-to-1 ratio right now with EVPs to our C-suite. We have one other EVP. We just onboarded one this week who supports our CFO and our new CTO. And then we have one that starts next week as well. So we're quickly building out that team. I think as we continue with our growth, we'll start filling in EA roles for the VP levels, because that is a little strapped. But yeah, it's kind of evolved since we started a little over 2 years ago. So
great. And so you mentioned earlier that both of your roles have really evolved since you initially started, and what it looked like 2 years in before Lex left. So can you tell me a little bit more about the additional sorts of responsibilities that each of you have taken on and what that looked like?
Yeah, Alexa, do you want to?
Yeah, no, I'll go. Sure. I mean, as with any startup, right, it's always evolving. You think you're signing up for one thing, and then you have like 10 other job duties 6 months later. But pre-COVID for me, as time went on and trust was built, I was able to, ask for more projects, ask for more responsibilities and get more involved. And then post-COVID, because of all the org changes and all the structural changes, I was able to support other executives who, for whatever reason, their assistants left or were on maternity leave. And so I really kind of got more involved with the other executive teams. And that really prepared me for the executive business partner role at Tack now. So I'm super grateful for that. And, at the time it can seem overwhelming when it's like all this is on your plate. And especially during COVID, when you think like the world is ending. But really, in the long run, it was such a blessing. I'm so grateful for the experience and all of that it taught me during that time. And having Alissa by my side was definitely, key. And I'm grateful for you and your support and your leadership and showing me how to take initiative and to level up in times of crisis, or just the startup hustle mentality, which is, so necessary for startups, especially during the pandemic.
Alissa, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just say as we continued working together, and she very early showed me that she wasn't going to drop any balls, and literally anything I gave her, she took and ran with. Mm-hmm. So the trust was built pretty quickly, and that enabled me, as my role was evolving, to give her new projects or, ad hoc things that came down the pipeline. I was like, can you take this and just own it? And I think it was important for her growth and development to give her things to fully own, and to not micromanage and just have quick check-ins, but I knew that whatever I gave her, she was going to be successful with.
Yeah. Okay, great. And so how did the two of you stay organized? Did you use any tools? I know I've seen sort of how Alexa keeps track of all the things I throw at her at any given time, but I'd be curious to know how you guys sort of followed up with each other and kept track of all the projects and initiatives that you were both running for these founders.
Yeah, we were big on G Suite, so Google Task Lists, Excel spreadsheets, text, Slack, email, phone, every form of communication. Really, Alissa and I were attached at the hip for the most part, but weekly syncs, daily syncs, constant communication was really just the key. We were just so in tune, we could literally just speak without speaking.
Yeah. And you were both regularly in communication with the founders. So did it ever get confusing for them to know who to ask for what tasks, or did all information flow through you, Alissa, and then go to Alexa? Tell me about that.
I think so. The first month, I remember everything flowed through me, just again, because I was new as well. I wanted to kind of manage the requests and be able to know what was really happening. And then with time and, both of us building trust with them and each other, they understood kind of the different things to come to us with. I will say the only time I think it got confusing was travel was a project I gave her to fully own. And I think as we were transitioning that to her, there was some confusion, but they would just reach out to both of us. So I never really remember it being an issue. I think it was pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lex, any additional thoughts on that, or would you agree with Alissa?
I would agree. I mean, because there was a lot of overlap, it didn't really matter at the end of the day. We were both kind of involved in their lives. We've downloaded all three of their lives. So,
yes. And what do you think made it, your relationship a success, and not only between the two of you, but also with the founders? Do you want to start, Alissa?
Yeah, my relationship with her was so special and unique. So this isn't going to translate to everyone, but we just formed such a deep friendship. And I think that stemmed from just being open and good communication, but also seeing each other as humans and not just machines. Everyone has lives, and we both have had a lot of personal things going on, both at the same time and also at different like similar things at different times. So we're able to relate to each other in a lot of ways that I think helped us form a very strong working bond and friendship. So there were times when like, I remember I was hospitalized in a foreign country and she completely like took over. And that was, probably like 6 months after she had started, completely like covered for me for like 2 weeks, or, times when, get off a phone call and she has tears welling up in her eyes and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, go home, take the rest of the day off. And I go in and tell the guys like, please leave her alone for the rest of the day. So I think just a fundamental understanding of like, we're all humans. We all have a lot of stuff going on, and having some empathy in the workplace. I haven't had that in the past. And I think I've learned a lot of what not to do from past managers I've had. And I also didn't have a mentor. I actually had a very like strange relationship with a past female boss. And I just remember thinking like, if I was ever in that position, I would never do that. And I think I came back to that a lot in my interaction with Alexa, just like, what would I want from a manager, and trying to extend that to her.
Yeah. And I also think it speaks volumes about, companies like Sweetgreen, who their culture, it's embedded in their culture, is to be, transparent, have good communication, and to value work-life balance, and just seeing people as whole humans, that we have lives, like, and we're here for the common mission, to make a positive impact. And so for that alone, like, it sets the ground to have these open, safe spaces at work, and relationships with your manager, and setting goals and all that stuff. It's just such a beautiful experience to have. But the empathy piece for me is huge. And that was like my biggest takeaway from working at Sweetgreen with Alissa directly, is just really seeing people on a human level and knowing that, like, we have lives and hearts and more to us. Like, we're an onion. It's not just produce, make money. Like, there's so much more.
I 100% agree with both of you. And I'm seeing some, stuff in the chat about this. And, one of the questions somebody said is, do you have any practical tips that EAs and AAs can apply to foster good working relationships? And I know one of the questions I was going to ask you is about feedback and communication. So maybe we can dig into that a little bit right now. What do you think, Alissa?
As far as the first part of your question, I just think being open. I quite candidly was going through a very big life change when I moved to LA and started at Sweetgreen, and I was very open with every single person. And that enabled me, I think it was the first time in my life I really was just like, blah, and that enabled me to form really like deep, meaningful relationships with coworkers. And a lot of people opened up back to me and said, the only reason I told you all this is because you were so open. So I think being, we talk a lot about this now, but being vulnerable, like it's hard, but I think it gives you such different relationship dynamics, which a lot of times are important in the workplace. We are trying to steer in that direction, but the past decade and, time before that was very much like, we're all performers, we're all machines. Like, you just come to work and you like shut the world off. And that's just, it's not feasible. It's not how we work. Like, we're souls. As far as feedback, I remember when Alexa started, we sat down in one of our earlier meetings and I said, I want our relationship to be like really iterative and honest and open. And so I think we should do constant real-time feedback. In tech, we do this twice a year, performance feedback reviews. I have seen them do a lot of harm, honestly, because they're tied to comp adjustments and bonuses, and it becomes more about that. I think how you learn and grow is real-time feedback, because you're not going to remember something you did 6 months ago. If a manager gives you an example of it, if you're told when it happens, it's going to click in your mind and you're going to adjust and do things differently the next time. And I told her I was going to do that with her, and I expected the same from her. I think feedback should be a two-way street. Managers are not immune, should not be immune from receiving feedback. And so I think we got in a good practice of doing that. I just asked her, if I do something or say something that you don't like or you don't appreciate, like, please tell me. And she did. And I think it helped both of us grow and again, form like a really special working relationship.
Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of, so when Lex came and joined us, I put her through sort of our onboarding process at Tack that we also like train our clients on. And one of the first things we did the first day was go through a list. It's like a page long of questions for her to get to know me and my preferences and how I operate, because I think it's super important when you're an EA to get that right out, right at the gate. And I think like, what was it like? So like one of the first questions is, how do you like to give and receive feedback? And are you okay with your EA pushing back on you? And I was like, oh, absolutely. You can totally tell me if I'm wrong. It's like, let me know. You will not hurt my feelings. I have a really thick skin. And I think you continue to do that and kind of, I say this very kindly, put me in my place because, I have like a vacation coming up and I wasn't going to take a vacation because I, like you, Alissa, came from the background of like hustle, 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 don't take a break, you get burnout. And we have a lot of things happening at Tack Advisors right now. And I was going to cancel my trip. And Lex was like, no, you're not. You're going on this trip and I will do your calls and I will make sure everything gets done and you're going. And I'm like, okay. Now I have somebody holding me accountable, which is awesome. And so, yeah, I think that setting those expectations up front, but then continuing to have those conversations and setting and resetting those expectations is super important. I don't know. What do you think, Lex? Anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, well, I would say to the example that you just spoke on is, a rising tide raises all ships. So like, if you're doing well, I'm doing well, the company's doing well. So we just have to see it in that we're all connected. So we got to take care of each other. And it's the whole empathy piece, like we're literally all connected. And that's, I feel like, enough said there. But yeah, what was the question?
Yeah, no, I think you answered it, right? Is that we're all connected and you recognize that I need to be a whole person to be able to work with you and lead you and lead this company. And then just in general about like giving and receiving feedback, I think that's a really, tactical thing. And I think another question somebody asked is just some additional feedback on like handling feedback and what that looks like. So what I will share as far as what I've seen work well in sort of implementing feedback, if you don't do that already within your company, is we have like sort of standard one-on-ones once a week with our employees. Lex and I kind of are a little bit more fluid because we work so closely every day, but for everybody else that works with me and reports to me, the first 5 minutes of our one-on-one is a personal check-in. And it's, how are you doing as a human being and what is coming down the pipe I need to know about? Like, do you need time off? Do you have some important, family obligation I need to be aware of? And I think creating that as part of your culture of having that personal check-in as well as a work check-in, I think would be a really tactical way to go about sort of creating that culture of empathy. Awesome. There was another question I think that came in as well as have you guys experienced any admins being resistant to feedback? And if so, how did you handle it?
Yeah.
Loaded question.
Yeah. Honestly, I did at Uber. I worked with someone that was very tough and we had a hard time. But I went directly to her and we had like some tough conversations, but I said, I do not, she was Eastern European. I don't know if it was a cultural thing, to be honest. Her personality type rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And I don't do this. I have zero tolerance for that. It doesn't solve anything. It fans the flames. So I went directly to her and it was definitely a process. But we both were like committed because our teams worked very closely together, and I had to work with her all day, every day. So I said, if this is going to work, like, this is what I need from you. And what do you need from me? Because again, it's a two-way street. You don't get to go to someone with feedback and just be like, you do this, 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 and this, and I don't like it. Just as you would in any relationship, a friendship, all these things require this like two-way communication. We experienced it, she can speak to this as well, but with someone at Sweetgreen, and in the end, it didn't end up working out. But again, I think approaching the conversation from a place of, I want to work better with you. I want to find a way with you that that works for both of us. So this is what I'm feeling. Like, what do you get from me? Like, what am I doing that I could do better for the relationship with you? I think there's no way for someone to be defensive if you frame things that way, because it's a team mentality. When you just go at someone with, again, this like very negative feedback of all the things you don't like that they do, you're going to get a this from them. And it's just going to create kind of a negative dynamic. So I think you just have to be open to hearing the things that someone doesn't appreciate about the way you work or communicate, or your style. And so if, again, it goes back to vulnerability, if you can be okay, like, you really have to develop a thick skin and be okay with hearing those things so that you can develop and grow alongside with your teammate. Like Lex spoke about earlier, we're all on the same team. We're all striving towards the same mission, trying to accomplish the same goal. So, I think it just comes down to like vulnerability, empathy. Like, you don't know what your coworkers are going through. So if someone's being super curt with you or rude, like, maybe approach the conversation first with like, oh, wow, they must be going through a really hard time.
Yeah.
I think there's just so many other ways that we have to like think about these dynamics.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's coming from a place of curiosity. I love that like phrase of, there's got to be something more going on here, and saying, hey, like, I noticed I had this interesting reaction when I said or did this. Is something going on? Could I have approached this situation differently? And sometimes it's I didn't even realize I did that. I'm sorry. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. And sometimes it's deeper than that. It's like, actually, yeah, when you did say this or you did do that, it did rub me the wrong way. And then now you've opened the floodgates and you can kind of dig into what it is that needs to be solved.
I will say, in person, and if you can't be in person, then video is always way more preferable, because there's so much taken out of context in writing. There was actually one, I can think of an example with Lex at Sweetgreen. And it was something so minimal. It was about conference rooms. We booted someone. It was just so minimal. And this person got very offended, and they were kind of going back and forth, and she was showing me the messages. I pulled both of them into the hallway and I literally moderated this. I said, I think I gave both you. I said, okay, so-and-so, like, what happened from your side? She said it. And I said, okay, I am her manager. I asked her to do this. She explained, I kind of gave her my take with defending Lex and allowed Lex to say her piece. And then we each said, sorry, misunderstanding. They hugged and we said, okay, let's go get on with our workday, because we have a lot of stuff to do. Mm-hmm. So even just like small things like that, it's just always just try to do it in person or on video, because there's just too much in writing and text and emails, and we're moving a mile a minute. And so too much is like taken out of context.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Les, tell me about some stuff that you've learned from Alissa that you've taken with you and brought here to Tack Advisors.
Well, I think we touched on most of it. The taking initiative and being able to jump in and be a team player was huge from the startup mentality, especially now at Tack. I started as the executive business partner, and now I'm doubling as a recruiter in the interim until we fill some more positions. But yeah, it's really exciting. Just having an open mind and really just being a team player is one of the biggest things I learned from Alissa. Obviously, the empathy piece, connecting on a personal level, getting to know your coworkers personally, not just professionally, and really building relationships and focusing on team building activities and things of that sort that make work happy, like a happy place and a safe space where you like the people that you are surrounded by all day, every day. And that to me is like one of the biggest takeaways. And I'm just super grateful.
We're so grateful to have you. I think you're doing a great job moonlighting as a recruiting coordinator. I'm so very thankful. I think this is great. Well, I see like a ton of questions that have come in, so I wanted to dig into some of these that have been asked. So one question I think is interesting because you've had to do some hiring, Alissa, as well. So you've seen it on the company side, hiring internally for your team, and then of course we see it at Tack Advisors every single day. But what are your thoughts on trying to find admin support during COVID times? What does that experience look like for you? And has it been any different from previous prior to the pandemic?
Just from a hiring perspective, I think that the market is actually pretty good right now because there are so many companies that were doing well during COVID. I will say, like, obviously the hiring is different. Everything's virtual. Onboarding is virtual. So that's a bit of a different dynamic. But does that person have like a more specific framing of that question? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's all that they ask. So in my perspective, I think hiring, I think the only biggest difference that I've seen when hiring for people during the pandemic and placing EAs is, really understanding from a company perspective, is this role going to be remote? Is it going to be hybrid? Is it eventually going to be in the office? And where do you work best? Because I know that was a piece that Lex and I talked about from the start. We're a remote first company. We have been, and I'm like, great, you live in South Florida and I want to see your face, but otherwise, like for the most part, you're going to be on your own, flying solo. So are you okay with being in a totally remote company environment, or are you going to miss being in a physical office space where you can have that water cooler talk and, feel and see people every single day? So from my perspective, that's been the biggest difference is whether or not people are comfortable being remote or better suited to be in an office.
I think she wrote.
Oh, and then it was my question for background. It's more like, do you see eager candidates to go above and beyond and do job, especially during COVID? Okay, so do you see people hustling more or being more motivated during COVID or less?
Yeah, I was reading her question at all. I think possibly a bit more as far as the like the eagerness and people wanting to go above and beyond. I only hire people, doesn't matter pandemic or no pandemic, that want to go above and beyond because this job can be gnarly. So you cannot have someone. I remember I helped build out the EA org at Uber. And I very specifically remember one interview where the woman told me, I work these hours, this is what I will do. This is what I won't do. And I was like, good luck to you. That could not work anywhere in any EA role I've had at any company. And the fact that she just came out with that during an interview kind of blew my mind. But I've only ever hired people that are eager, regardless of like what's going on in the world. I just really need to work alongside people that don't see this role in a little box, because there's so much that happens outside of that box that is very important. And as you grow in your role and you need to be able to flex, and, Lex talked about earlier, like changing priorities. There are so many times where I was like, this is the project we're working on. And then 2 minutes later, I was like, this project's not happening anymore. And you need to go do this, and her being able to be like, fine, great. Got it. And so that's like one of the main things I look for when interviewing, honestly.
It's the same for us. And I think it kind of goes back to there are definitely companies and roles where the EA position can be very specific, and there are very specific tasks and responsibilities. And the executives actually want somebody to stay very focused on that role. And that's great for people who do want that type of job and want the 9 to 5 and leave. And there's nothing like that's great for some people. But then there's also people who really like the ambiguity of a startup that, want to do more and want to work more than an 8-hour day and love the chaos. And I think it's different strokes for different folks and different lids for every pot. And so I think it's just an importance of like knowing what's important to you and what do you want to get out of your job and your life and what makes you whole.
I think that's a good call out. And I think you also have to look at the type of companies that you're either interviewing for or want to work for. If you want something more structured, don't work for a global company such as Uber that's going through hyper growth, or something like Sweetgreen, or, find something that's a little bit more boutique, or a startup that's bootstrapped and moving slowly perhaps, or, be very intentional with what you want your life, your job to be like, and then the type of companies you target. So I think that's a really important call out.
Yeah. Let's see here. There's so many other questions. Somebody asked, have you found a way to put value to your job, which actually you have. We did sort of a webinar on this last year, which is called Know Your Power, Know Your Worth. But really, how do you justify adding a new person to your team and what the ROI for your job is? So Alissa, you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, this is an ongoing struggle because most of our job is unseen, magic in the wings. You don't ever hear or know about. I've literally had this conversation just a couple of months ago with my CEO. I was like, there's so many weird things I've done for you that you will never know about. And that means I'm doing my job well. Like, you should never know. But it does make attaching the value difficult, especially, I've been having these conversations ongoing as we've broken out roles and posted open roles on our website for different executives. And I've gotten some pushback, and I think that was my intention with scoping out the different leveling with the exec team and getting their buy-in and really trying to educate them. But I also think just hiring for new roles, I think it goes back to communication. Like, you have to be really open with the executives you support of your bandwidth, because yes, we are to a certain extent, yes, people, but we also have to have boundaries, and pushback is important when it matters, when it matters, I guess, for lack of a better term. But so I think just having that open communication, which I have many times throughout my time at Sweetgreen, just being like, this is too much. This person needs this role. And because you spoke about earlier, it leads to burnout, and then you're not good for anyone. You're not good for them. You're not good for yourself. You're not good for like your plants, your animals, your humans at home. So I think, it just all goes back to communication. Lex, I don't know if you have like a different take on that.
Yeah, no, I think it's impossible to put a value on anything, right?
I think the way I look at it and how I determined it was time for me to get an EVP at Tack is, right now when we started as a 3-person team. We're going to be 10 in the next couple of weeks. So it's a lot of growth in a year and a half. But I started by being the CEO, the CTO, the CMO, the CFO. I was wearing all of these hats, and then it got to the point where like our business has grown so much, we have so much demand, like I can't possibly wear all those hats anymore. And so I started looking at my own calendar and my own schedule, and I was like, all right, how much time am I spending scheduling my own meetings? And how much time am I spending creating all of our marketing content and posting on social media and doing these administrative tasks that I know an EA can do because I place these people all day, every day. And so I know I can find someone to do this for me. And that alone, I think the time that Lex has been able to give back to me in my day, the amount of hours that she's working and the projects that she's managing and the things that are getting pushed forward now that weren't getting pushed forward before, is easily quantifiable because I know how much I bill on an annual basis. So then take that, divide it by how many hours are in the day, and that's the value she provides me.
Right. When I did the role scope with the founders and our chief people officer, that was kind of questioned because it had the different comp bands in there. And when I was questioned on it, I said, well, so-and-so is spending, she told me, 2 hours a week on her own calendar. And I said, how much hourly is that? But, quite a lot of money in this room right now. Like, how much are you guys making per hour if you can get this amount back per week just in this one task? Yeah. And again, like, I think there's so much that you don't know before you have executive operations support, and having someone that can come in and very quick, like Meagan, you saw with Lex, like I think probably you were like, whoa, I didn't even know I needed help with this thing, but she's like taken it on or done it or just been like, I'll handle that. And so I think, yeah, it's, you see, as you go on, like, wow, I didn't even know I needed help with these things, and saving me this much time. And
I think to speak on that, and something that I've really appreciated about you, Lex, is before she started, I created a spreadsheet, and it was like a priority list of all these projects of things I wanted her to help me with. And we went over it the first week, and we're constantly sort of looking at it and shifting and prioritizing. But then something will come up, and she'll just slap me, or if we're on a call, she's like, hey, I saw this hit your inbox, or do you want me to just do that for you? And I've been conditioned for the past year and a half to have to do everything on my own and be very self-sufficient. And so I think you've done a really good job, and that would be sort of my word to the wise of people watching this. If you want to take on more tasks, but if you see something that you think you can own for your exec, just ask them, because you've taken on all kinds. You're starting to help me like source and like reach out to candidates for jobs, right? And that was never part of your job, and never something that, I had ever expected for you to do, but we had a need, and she's helping. And, there's just all kinds of, I know, so proud. So I think it's great. So I think there's been a lot of questions in here about and people also that maybe we can talk about after this, but how you differentiate an executive assistant from an executive business partner, and what that level of structure looks like. So do you want to go into that a little bit more, Alissa? I think that'll answer a few people's questions.
Sure. I see an executive assistant as a bit more tactical. So, traditional calendar, travel, expense reports, event planning and management, some different like project management stuff that's a little more straightforward. Executive business partner, I see as like a true strategic partnership. So for instance, I run our company all hands. So I'm curating the deck. I'm giving the proposed agenda to the executive team every month based on what's happening across the org. Meeting with key stakeholders on each team, understanding initiatives with each team, timelines, deadlines. I join a lot of meetings either on behalf of an executive or just because I need to know what's going on within that world. I work very closely with the chief of staff. There's a lot of like overlay there. So I kind of see this role like as a hybrid between, EA, strategic EA support, and a chief of staff role. But yeah, there's a lot of ambiguity, and especially Lex and I, we worked very closely together. So there were some like blurred lines, just as there are with the chief of staff I work with and myself. But I think it's a lot more like proactivity, like understanding what's happening and trying to be in your executive's mind, knowing all the things happening and trying to always be like one step ahead of them.
Yeah. And Lex, have this EVP title, and I was very intentional about giving you that title when you came over to Tack, because I do look at you as a partner for me, and I give you a lot of transparency. Like, you're in my inbox, you're attending our strategy meetings, and you're driving that stuff. But any thoughts on that, of what that transition has looked like for you, going from being an EA at Sweetgreen into moving into an EVP role here at Tack?
Yeah, for me, the big difference is it's more business oriented, like big picture business oriented, versus the minutia and just like dotting the T's, crossing the I's, making sure everything gets handled. It's more of like taking a step back. So for me, it's a whole new experience, but I feel, given my role at Sweetgreen. I feel prepared, and you are a great leader, Meagan, and I love working with you and the team, and just the full transparency. I think being in on all these meetings just makes it easier because you get to see the business from all angles, and you can provide your input and add value to the team from that space.
Yeah. What I love, and I think this kind of goes into a question of somebody is, how can you motivate me to speak up during weekly meetings? So I think you've done a great job with that, but I think, and I'd love to hear your perspective of why you think you've been able to feel comfortable kind of stepping in, because you talk about the marketing piece in our weekly team sync, and then like in our strategy session, you definitely shared your feedback and thoughts on what the strategy and vision for this company is going to be. So any tips from your perspective on people who maybe are a little shy in speaking up?
Yeah, my tip would be find a mentor, someone that you admire, someone that you would change places with, and someone that you respect. Like for me, that was Alissa. I saw her stand up and speak up and take action. And so from there, it was like, okay, if she can do it, then I have permission, I can do it. So it's kind of just like seeing someone else do it. So get a mentor for sure, someone that can help you and show you the way.
Yeah. What about you, Alissa? Any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, and there were times when, going back to the feedback piece, like initially with her getting her footing and feeling comfortable, she would come to me with a lot of questions, and I started to push back on her, and I said, go do the digging yourself first before you come to me with then more info. Because I knew she could do it. It's just she needed to feel like safe and like she had the ability to make mistakes or possibly fail and it be okay. And I think that really helped her to grow. Even like seeing her speak right now, it's like, it makes me so happy because I've just like watched your exponential growth. And I think you've up-leveled in your career so much faster than so many other people in this role that I've worked with. And, that's like to your own abilities and smarts and grace and people skills and all that sort of stuff. But being able to take feedback, and I think having the special relationship we did where you could make mistakes and you knew you weren't going to get in trouble or, little things like that. But yeah, like she had spoken earlier about taking over some executives when people were leaving the company or, out on leave. And there was a comment made by one of our executives that she had helped during that time that it was hard going back to his original EA that he had worked with for over 2 years because his 5 months with Alexa was like so much far and away, like more impressive. And that was like bittersweet because I'm like, wow, you've worked with this human for 2 years and they're disappointing now. But also I was like, I've like mentored this person for a couple of years and that's like incredible. Like you could not want better feedback of both someone you manage and, indirectly as a manager, because that meant I was doing my job right, and being able to see her like flourish and grow and then be able to leave a company and go have this amazing job that she's so happy. We'd still talk all the time and it's constantly like telling me how happy she is. And yeah, it's just been incredible to watch her grow.
Thank you. And I think you bring up an important point of whether you're currently an admin leader in a company or aspiring to be an admin leader in a company, or me, who is a leader and owner of this company. Because you kind of mentioned it earlier, Alissa, that you didn't really have mentors, and a lot of what you learned by doing the opposite of what you saw people do. And you wanted to make sure that when you got the chance to be a manager, that you changed that pattern that you had seen. And I think it's been the same thing for me. Like I didn't have a mentor ever until I moved into recruiting. When I worked for a decade in hospitality management, and I just had to learn on the job and figure it out. And so I think when you are a manager or a mentor of admins or people, I think the goal should always be to train them to be better than you and have them take your job someday. I mean, I think that's like the most important thing. Like I am, imparting a lot of wisdom on Lex and telling her like a lot of stuff about my company that it's a risk that I'm taking. Like, she may someday leave and take that knowledge with her. I hope she wants to stay for a while and join us. But I think it's always about like, try to do your best to make the people around you even better than you are.
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
We still have, I think, a few more minutes. Maybe we'll just wrap this up by saying, what are top 3 qualities that you look for, Alissa, when hiring an admin? And I'll ask Alexa that afterwards because she's helping us. We're actually going to be hiring another EA on our team here at Tack. And so she's going to be the one doing the initial interviews and screens for that. So why don't we start with you, Alissa? What is it you look for?
I think the general approach to the role is super important to know. Like, does this person, like I gave that example of that woman I interviewed that was like, this is what I want. And it's structure. And that doesn't, for the companies I've worked at, doesn't work. So I really look for people that honestly want growth. Like, where can this lead? Or like, what are different projects I can work on? Like, all this foundational stuff is great, but what does the executive need? Or like, what's going on in the world? So really wanting that like true partnership aspect. I think someone that has just like a 24/7 mentality, truly, because it is at times, kind of ebbs and flows, and it's different at every company. Like Uber, for example, is global, truly global. So dealing with many, many, many time zones. And so you're going to bed with people waking up and you're waking up with people ending their day. And so I have a bit more work-life balance at Sweetgreen, but there are times, there's a lot going on right now. And so I'm truly working most of my waking hours, and it's a lot. So we need people that are open to that, like that are going to respond. Like, I don't think there was a single text I sent Alexa at any time of any day, like weekend or not, that she didn't respond to within like a couple minutes. So I think that is really important. And then I will say 0 ego. There's just no place for ego in this role between an executive and their support. And then within an EA EVP dynamic of that team. I have dealt with that a lot in my career. And again, like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for the egos. We're all on the same team. We're all trying to accomplish the same things. I am not too good for any task, even, with Lex and now the person that works for me in her role, like there's just so much going on that I'm like, I'll do this because I know she's doing a bunch of stuff that I wouldn't normally do, but it just needs to happen. And there's no like, oh, I don't do this anymore. There's just no time for that. We just need to be moving forward. So I would say that was a very long-winded answer to your question, but I would say those are the 3 things I really look for.
100% agree. What do you think, Lex? And thinking even for like hiring for us at Tack, like, what do you think makes a really great EA or executive assistant business partner?
The first thing that comes to my mind is that they have to be super grounded and they have to be able to catch all the balls in the air. Like when you're working with creatives and executives who are like, go, 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 and up here constantly, you need to be able to like ground your executive, and be grounded yourself to be able to catch and manage all of these balls flying at you. And to Alissa's point, no ego, because no task is too big or too small, right? And a team player. I think they have to be a team player, especially if you're in a startup mentality. Efficient. I'm big on efficiency. They have to be quick on their feet and efficient at the same time, right? So, because there's so many things happening, like you have to be able to multitask.
No, 100% agree. Awesome. Well, I know we're getting right to the end of this, and there was a couple of questions. Somebody asked if they can connect with Alissa on a professional level, and the answer is yes, of course. Yeah, go ahead and add her on LinkedIn, but Alissa is also a coach here at Tack Advisors. And so if you are looking for coaching support one-on-one, Alissa is available and interested in helping you. And then there were some other questions about us at Tack Advisors and what we do and if we do recruiting all over the nation. And the answer to that is also yes. So we're in pretty much every major city in the US and have even done some searches in Canada and abroad. So if you need any help in those areas, please let us know. And yeah, please connect with Alissa and Alexa on LinkedIn. They're always here to help. Like Alissa said, Alexa's very responsive. So anything else the two of you would like to add before we go?
No, thank you so much.
Yeah, this was fun. I just think it's such a special, like you had pointed out in the beginning, just such a special, like full circle story. And
right.
Yeah, I'm just happy to know and work with both of you. And yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for being a great matchmaker, Alissa.
Always.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. I hope everybody here has a great day.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Meagan, Alissa, and Alexa. And please reach out to them via the show notes, leaderassistant.com/130, and connect with them on LinkedIn, say hi, and check out Tack Advisors if you're looking for a new executive assistant or executive business partner, chief of staff role or similar. All right. Talk to you soon.
Please review on Apple Podcasts. GoBulls.com